Good morning. So today we're going to go over chapter 3 and some things that you need to pay attention or look out for. You're going to have 2 short answer questions on your comprehensive quiz. So I want to make sure that you understand what's being asked and where you can find more information about those questions. So in this section, we basically talk about physical growth and development throughout the lifespan and some of the more important things in that section. So as children get older, from infancy up until the end of the toddler years, they tend to grow at a rapid pace. And as they get even older, that starts to slow down. So on average, we're going to talk about things that occur on average, but can vary from person to person. So generally, girls weigh slightly less and are slightly shorter at birth. And then you also have differences across different ethnic groups. These are average heights and builds for children of this age. As children get older, as you might have noticed, they go from sort of being really top heavy with a big head, kind of like a bobblehead doll, which is why they're so cute. And then as they get older, they start to look more even. So they start to look like their head fits their little body by the time that they go to kindergarten or first grade. But they grow so rapidly during this time, and there are a lot of things that could affect their development, including but not limited to the foods that they're exposed to and other things that would be correlated with economic factors. As they get older or reach middle childhood, the growth tends to taper off and it was steady over time. And then you have another huge growth spurt in adolescence. And so we're going to see a lot of brain development during adolescence, and then also you're going to see folks' heights jump up. And boys actually continue growing into their 20s. So during adolescence, we have the pituitary gland releasing different sex hormones, which will basically tell the body when it should go through puberty and the different stages of puberty. This interacts with leptin. So leptin is produced by your fat cells. So this is why folks who weigh more tend to go through puberty a little bit earlier. So menarche is going to be the first period. When do you get menarche? It depends. The average age is 12, but it can go anywhere from 9 to 14, just depending on the person. African American girls, on average, tend to get puberty earlier than white women or Caucasian women. So puberty in boys, okay, this is when they're going to have their first ejaculation or spermarchy. That would be the sort of like equivalent, not exactly the equivalent, but this is similar to menarche, and that once you have menarche and spermarchy, then they are able to reproduce. And so here are some secondary things that are going on at this time. And then we're talking a little bit about aging. So outward are going to be things that you can easily see, and internal will be things like brain size, which you can't easily see, but which have physical effects on your development. So the brain grows faster than any part of your body. And the brain develops so much from the time that a child is 2. So from 0 to 2, you see a lot of brain growth and a lot of neurons are developing. You have so many connections, and most of those connections will go unused. And we'll talk about this again once we talk about synaptic pruning. I want you to pay special attention to synaptic pruning because that's going to be one of your short answer questions. So we have all of these connections, okay? From the time from 0 to 2, we develop all of these neurons, all of these connections. But those things that aren't used, so they're going to slowly fade away. So that's what they mean by pruning. So unused neurons and unused connections are going to fade away so that the ones that remain can become more sophisticated and more connected. So if you look on your book, if you look in your book on page 96, you will see a neural network over time. And what you see is at the beginning, you have a lot of neurons, but you don't have as much connection. So the connections are not as intricate. But as we get older, we have less neurons, but the connections become more intricate over time. And that's essentially what the neurons are doing. And that is synaptic pruning. So over time, those things that aren't used are pruned away so that what is used can become more efficient and more complex. So I want you to look at that picture because it really explains, or it allows you to see this concept more clearly. So again, synaptic pruning, you have established neurons building better connections, and then neurons that were not being used are being pruned away. So for example, when we're born, we have the ability at even from about 18 months to hear all the different sounds in any language on earth. But as we get older, we can only hear the slight differences in sounds in our own language. This is why you have someone who's lived in the United States for 20 years per se, they will still have an accent if they moved here when they were an adult, because they literally cannot hear the slight differences in sounds because those neurons were pruned away. So what do these larger neurons look like? They tend to be larger, as I mentioned. They have more dendrites, or basically the ability to make better connections, okay? And then they have more myelin. So myelin covers the neuron. It allows connections to go faster. And as we get older, that's a process that naturally happens. And they reposition. So when we're born, they could basically be used for anything. And as we continue to use our brain, it adjusts to the information that it receives, and it basically has certain clusters of neurons in certain areas that allow us to specialize. You may sort of remember this from Psych 1. Shaken baby syndrome is when you repeatedly shake the baby, and that can affect their development and the development of their neurons. So again, that kind of leads into plasticity. So plasticity means that your brain is able to adapt and change over the course of time, given different circumstances and situations.